Welcome back to the Fire Drill. On this week's episode, Matt Ginella joined the three of us to have his takes on the Genesis. But before we get into that, Tuesday, episode 5 of The Grind on our YouTube channel, Fire Pit Collective YouTube. Go there, subscribe, like, comment, do all those things. Thanks to Golf Tech for their support of that awesome series. Get a lot of messages on Twitter about, hey, I like the full swing, or it was okay, but I'd like to see some. Well, we have one. So go check it out. It's about the grinders and what life looks like for people not flying in private planes. So this week's episode, Matt joined us, Michael, Alan, myself, and we talked Jon Rahm and his domination. We obviously talked Tiger. He was the biggest story of the week, despite Rahm's dominance. We talked Bernhard Langer and his dominance on the Champions Tour. And so another great conversation with a lot of great stories from everybody. I mean, it's everything that I'd love about the Fire Drill. It's the four of us talking golf. Here we go.
Hello, this is Alan Shipnuck back for another Fire Drill podcast. As always, joined by Michael Bamberger and Ryan French. And today we have the pleasure of Matt Ginella joining us. We have Philadelphia, Oceanside, and the heartland of America covered. And I'm here in Northern California. So we've all been tuned into the final round at Riviera. Jon Rahm is a monster. He's the Masters favorite. He's the clear number one in the world, no matter what some dumb math formula says. Command performance by Jon Rahm. We've been talking about this guy all year. He seems like he's winning every week, but Riviera is a place where Tiger Woods never won, or Jack Nicklaus. And Rahm actually mentioned that. He was aware of that unusual statistic and said it'd be meaningful to pick one off here. It's an elevated event. There's all these different layers to this, but what do you guys think of this performance and this victory?
Long pause. The guy's ridiculous. It's like, how is he not the favorite every time he tees it up at no matter what course it is? I mean, there was a lot of debate on this show, on this podcast, on others of like, is Cam Smith, is Jon Rahm the best player in the world right now? Is Max Homa? No, it's Jon Rahm. The dude is ridiculously good and a stone cold killer and complains more than any best golfer in the world I've ever seen in my life.
That's part of his charm.
If we don't get to see Cam Smith playing on the PGA Tour anymore, if he were, he possibly would give this guy a run for his money. But lacking that, we don't have him. I mean, this Cam Smith makes putts from everywhere and probably putts better and chips better and pitches better than anybody in the game. So it's kind of really hard to know. It was a wonderful tournament. It's great to see Riviera, but it kind of does make you miss some of the people who aren't in the field. I'm not taking a single thing away from Jon Rahm, but it is a little. He's the runaway best golfer on the PGA Tour right now, but the PGA Tour is missing some big talents.
That's a good point, Matt. What do you think?
Well, I think it's Rahm. I think Rahm has proven himself to be the guy who to get to number one, you got to go through Rahm, and Scotty Scheffler went through Rahm to get there. And I think other players are going to try to compete with him, but it's his for the taking and keeping for the foreseeable future. He's going, I don't think there's going to be this long chunk of time where Jon Rahm isn't able to perform at a very high level, regardless of the course, regardless of the conditions of the course, the setup of the course, whether it's a major, an elevated event, Ryder Cup. He's a beast. His focus is being number one and being the greatest of all time and winning as many, he's a product of Seve, Tiger, technology, athleticism. He's got everything and a focus. I told this story recently on one of these podcasts of a Jason Day event and everyone's partying and fraternizing and having fun. And all he was doing was just hitting shots, competing against himself or competing against anybody wanting to compete against him. He's built for this. And I just don't see him, letting go of that wheel anytime soon. It's going to be fun to watch.
I mean, that's a great point because Rory has, for a while now, has seemed ambivalent about, he wants to de-emphasize results and not let them define him, and he wants to, be an ambassador and a statesman and a dad and a husband and a book critic. It seems like sometimes golfer's way down on the list for him, and a brand builder and a visionary and a venture capitalist and all these things. Rahm just wants to win tournaments. He wants to be number one. Like, his life is simple, and as you say, Matt, like he doesn't try and hide from it. He's very open with his ambition, and I think that frees him up. Where Rory's almost conflicted. Like, oh, is golf too important? And for Rahm, it's like it's the sun and the moon for him, and that's what I like. I mean, it's always frustrating when you have a massive talent who doesn't chase it as hard as they could, right, in any sport. And sometimes it feels that way with Rory, but with Rahm, it's like, just bring it on, man. He wants it every week. And to me, I mean, that's what I love in a great athlete.
Alan, where is Rahm he's still managed by Steve Loy, isn't he?
Yes.
And does Loy still manage Phil?
Yes.
And what are the other relationships there? He's good friends with Phil's brother. And
Tim Mickelson was Rahm's agent until he decided to become Phil's full-time caddy. And I mean, I asked Rahm about this not that long ago, and I guess it was in Kapalua, and he said he's still friends with Phil. They'll still play recreational golf. He still respects him. They just have a strong disagreement on, where to make their living. But one thing that's been impressive about Rahm is in this very acrimonious time for professional golf, he's been a voice of reason and gentleness, and he's been conciliatory. It's been genuine from him, where he said, I wish we could all be together. I'd like these guys on the Ryder Cup team. And I was just talking to a live golfer who must remain anonymous, unfortunately. And he was basically like, fuck Rory. Like, that guy, we're so tired of his sanctimony. But Rahm's cool. I see him around. He's really cool to all of us. I thought it was just, that's the feeling a lot of the guys on that tour. The Rahm has stayed above the fray, even as he's, been a strong advocate for the tour. And his allegiance to the tour, his fealty to the tour has been very important. But he's managed to walk a very fine line where he can still say nice things about the live guys. You can still hope that we can put the game back together. And I think he's kind of been elevated in all this as just a voice of reason.
He's sort of Dustin Johnson-like in that regard. One might say Dustin Johnson is to America what Jon Rahm is to Europe. Just sort of people like him, even though they don't resent his talent. And, he just walks a fine line of being honest and standing for golf, which there's not a lot of that right now.
Yeah, nobody has shown really any ill will towards Dustin for going to live, which is amazing. But part of it is because he very publicly resigned his PGA Tour membership in the beginning, and he didn't sign on to the lawsuits. And that's why a lot of the tour guys have been bitter, because they're getting sued by their ex-colleagues, and they feel like a lot of them, they want it both ways. They want to play in the FedEx Cup. They want this. They want that. Dustin has never asked for any of that. He's always just said, "Hey, man, I took the money. I'm having fun," and he's made his position very clear. So I think you're right. No one's mad at Rahm. No one's mad at Dustin. Everyone else is kind of caught in the shrapnel. But
Ryan, have you ever had a chance to get to Riviera?
I did. I caddied for Mark in a Pro-Am last year. For those that are listening that don't know, there's a lot of Pro-Ams that happen that are not associated with the actual Wednesday Pro-Am that most people know. So there's a lot of pros that get paid to come. Mark got paid $3,000, and Mark and I talked about it this week. It just shows the top players how good they are. I think Mark shot like 1 under or something like that. he like hit it good. That course is so hard. And like to think that whatever he finished at 17 under, 18 under, it's just ridiculous. The place was ridiculously good.
So for the three of you guys, and so all four of us have been there, and I'm sure Matt and Alan, like me, you've probably been there lots over the years. What did you think of the course? There's a lot of ways to say this is the start of the PGA Tour, but getting to Riviera is a staple of the PGA Tour season. What was it like for you guys seeing the golf course on TV?
Go ahead, Matt. I know you have some feelings on this.
No, I mean, I love the golf course. I love the tournament. I love how it separates players who are playing great from players who are not playing great. You know, over 4 days, 4 rounds, all the different shots you have to hit, all the different great iron shots you have to hit. Where you miss matters. I mean, in so many ways, shapes, and forms. It's golden age architecture at its finest. It gets lauded by the architectural geeks, but it also gets appreciated by people who just love great golf. It's got respect from the greatest players of the game, from the modern day architects. It's marveled at for all the right reasons. I love, it's got controversial, the 10th hole itself creates so much great debate. And Homa birdieing it all 4 days. Of course he did, because he appreciates, understands, respects great architecture, strategy. He's a thinker out there on the golf course. I love Riviera. I think Daniel Rappaport said, "Oh, this is the greatest course of the PGA Tour season." And there's not a close second. I disagree with that. I think just at the AT&T, you have 3 golf courses that are in the conversation, whether or not you think Pebble's better than Riviera, or Spyglass is better than Pebble, or Monterey Peninsula Shore is in the conversation. I think they're in the conversation. I love Riviera for all that it provides. And I wish we had more of it on the tour, where it's not necessarily just about like brute strength and length, and you have to move it right and left and long and short. I think it's a fabulous venue. Thankfully, we get to see the best players play it. It's a private golf course. Not a lot of any of us, whatever us is, gets to play it. So it's fun to watch it and enjoy it every year.
I agree with every word of that, but watching today, the fourth hole, that Redan par 3, only 14% of the field actually hit it in regulation, and like it's just a bad hole. They got to redo that green. Like, you can't have a par 3 but no one can hold the green. And so that's a little blemish. And 10, I mean, I've always loved.
Did you say Alan? Did you say 14% of the players hit that green?
Yeah,
that's a joke. I mean, that's Shinnecock Hills level joke.
Yeah,
and I mean that's a firmness factor. That's a modern day green speed factor. And then things have to evolve and adjust. And maybe they look at those numbers and say, okay, we have to adjust it.
A tweak there would be very helpful. But even the problem with 10 is that the green has gotten so extreme. I mean, what's great about a drivable par 4 is that you can actually drive the green, right? Nobody can drive the green there. It's impossible to hold it. So then the smart play is just to lay it up out there to the left, and is basically now like a 50-yard par 3. You just lay it up a little short left, and you pitch it on.
Okay, but so hold on, let me just stop you there for a second, because if you say it's a drivable par 4, maybe it's not a drivable par. It's just a short 4. Short 4 doesn't mean it's drivable. Just because it's short doesn't mean you should be able to actually drive it.
I guess, but I mean, people used to try, but now it's just like the penalty that it's so extreme around that green that if you're out of position, you can easily make a 6. And so the plays become more and more just to go out there to the left and just kind of pitch it on. And so I think you're right. I mean, you're right, Matt. It's how you define it. But if you 20 years ago, it was a drivable par 4 and people tried to drive it and you could drive it. And now it's just like, I don't know. I think that you talk about evolution because of the equipment and everything else. I think that hole has evolved for the worse. So that's my only complaint with Riviera. You have two holes that are very borderline, and it's a fun debate. I threw it out there on Twitter today, and a bunch of people wrote back saying that's why I love it. The game's too easy for these guys. I want them to be stressed.
Alan, I'll give you a three. I'll give you a third hole. How about 18 with Zalatoris doing driver and a sandwich?
Yeah,
that's a joke.
I know. I remember Robert Allenby hitting a 4-wood in there to win a playoff back in the day in the 90s. Like, that's not Riviera.
It was raining and there was like 9.
It was a little chilly. Nevertheless, yeah. I mean,
I put out a tweet about 10 that I don't have an opinion because I saw so many articles, tweets, long form, deep dives. I was just like, hey, I just like everybody to know I have no opinion about number 10.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fine. It's just a hole.
Did you consult with Jeff Ogilvy's mother?
I did, and I just was like, hey, you know what? I don't care about number 14 at Detroit Country Club. You know why? I just don't care about it. I just don't.
That's totally valid. I mean, it's the ultimate first world problem.
It's like, Country Club. 78 articles about a fucking hole. Can we just move on with it already?
No, we
cannot. Par or make a 2 or make a 9, and let's go to the 11th hole. Okay, 11's a great hole, by the way.
I mean, I love that, Ryan. You're absolutely right. But it does speak to something larger about how, we've got these ancient playing fields that are 100 years old or more. They're the most beloved courses we have. And to Michael's point about, flip wedges in 18, I mean, as the game is always evolving, and of course, like Riviera is hemmed in, they can't stretch it at all. I mean, there's nowhere to go. And so it brings up these larger points about the equipment, about the USGA being asleep at the wheel. And it makes you wonder about the future. Like, I mean, and Riviera is now, this is even more relevant because it's going to host the Olympics. It's got a lot of big time. It's got the U.S. Women's Open coming. Like, it's going to be a stage like that's one of the elite in the entire sport. And so, if it's being compromised by all these different factors, it demands a little examination. To your point.
So, one interesting thing about Tenant Riviera, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because I just said I don't care about it, and now I'm going to say why I care about it.
Classic Ryan French. I don't care, but.
But one second, Scott Fawcett, for those that don't know, Decade, like, he kind of changed the game. Like, everybody used to lay up, or a large majority of players used to lay up on that hole. And then he did all the shot link thing, and it's like it plays a half a stroke easier if you go at the green. And now everybody goes at the green. And now it might have changed this year, but like, it's crazy what modern technology, not only on the course but off the course. Like, no one had access to every single shot and what that player made from that spot. And so Scott Fawcett is like, hey, here's the facts. Like, if you go at the green, you're going to make a half a stroke less over 4 days than if you lay up. That's not, he's made it factual. So the technology advancements are not just the club and the ball. It's access to those numbers that make the decision mathematical.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, it also speaks to how hard that green is that guys laying up to a sand wedge, full swing sand wedge, like, they can't even hold the green from 80 yards or whatever. So it's an interesting debate that we don't have to continue any further, but it's an annual one.
Sure. I think we should. I'd really like to hear more about it. I'm just kidding.
All right. No disrespect to Jon Rahm, but at least Thursday and Friday, I'd say the star of, and possibly even Saturday when he played great, the star of the week was the host, Tiger Woods. And, his first time at a real tournament in quite a while. And, he grounded out. Unfortunately, he's over par on Sunday, which just continues this trend where as the week goes on, he just loses vigor. And it's more and more of a struggle with his ankle and his leg and his body. And so there was just enough flashes there where, it looks like Tiger Woods can still play golf, but for him to walk, 30 miles across 4 days and all the preparation that needs to be tournament sharp, that I think it's an open question. But Michael, you wrote a very insightful piece on firepitcollective.com ahead of the tournament. And one of the takeaways was, it's Tiger Woods. You can never underestimate him. So be careful. Do so at your own peril. But what did you make of his performance?
Not so much the performance, more just looking at the man, where he is in his life and how much he still needs competitive golf in his life, because like Michael Jordan and many others that we've seen over the years, it's really has defined his life. And he is a tremendous philanthropist. I'm sure all of us have read a lot about what he's done, and he seems to be very devoted to his kids and a budding architecture business and all the rest. But he's a competitive golfer. 47 is not old today if you haven't had all the setbacks to your body that the Tiger has had. So it's kind of actually heartbreaking to see how important it is to him, but it's also just part and parcel of the life of the athlete and this particular athlete. I think it's I don't see an easy path forward for him, to be really truthful about it. I don't know what really is going to bring deep meaning to his life, because this is probably pretty much as good as he can play right now.
I mean, after that deep thought, what do I do? What do you follow all that up with? But it is, I just wrote an article. I love Tiger for different reasons, and I'll take it from a different perspective. Like, he's just such an icon in the game. The guy barely made the cut for most of the day. Friday was outside the cut. And he is always the needle. And whatever tour he's on, he is going to be the tour that people want to be on. And no matter what, whether it's realistic or not, today gives everyone hope that in April he can win the Masters again. And we'll all be locked in, and he changes the game. That's all there is to it. Like, I tweeted jokingly, like, I took a picture of, he was one below the cut line. It's like, hey, all you guys are playing for a lot of money because of the guy who's one outside the cut line. Maybe it's time to make some bogeys. But on my article on firepitcollective.com that will be out today or tonight I think he's just matured as a human being, and he's a flawed human being like us, but he's just an important part of the game. And his little interaction with Justin after the first round and the way he does interviews now, I just think that he's grown up a lot. And it's just fun to see him out there.
How about you guys?
In some ways, I think I would agree with you, Ryan. I think he's growing up. We're all on our own path of maturation, perspectives, life-altering experiences, whether those be car accidents or someone close in your life dies, or something happens that rocks you to the core and makes you think differently. We have, again, covering Tiger since 1995. I know, Michael, we've all been basically covering him in some way, shape, or form. There's Tiger, the golfer competitor. There's Tiger, sort of the dad and man. There's Tiger, the buddy and jokester. There's Tiger, the businessman. There's all kinds of layers to this guy. For me, I've just continued. I've stopped looking to Tiger as the guy, who I want to idolize and marvel at in anything other than just the competitor, Tiger, the competitor, and what he's done for the game of golf and what he does for us when he's on camera trying to beat his peers. what he's done to create the Jon Rahms and the Max Homas and the Justin Thomases and cultivating this, engaging with this next generation. I'm all for it. I think watching him over the course of the last 4 days at Riviera do what he did, shoot what he shot, hit it 335 yards, drive it by all these guys, swing speed. I'm like, okay, every time he tees it up, I'm with Tiger. I think he can potentially win a golf tournament. Ben Crenshaw had no business winning the Masters the second time. He had no game. Nothing was going to say that he was capable of doing that. He caught Magic. Harvey Penick's funeral, came in, boom, won the Masters. Jack Nicklaus had no business winning the 86 Masters. He was done. He came back and won another major champion. Darren Clark, done. Won an Open champion. Adam Scott was done. He was flawed. He can't putt. Wins a major champion. Like Justin Rose at the age of 32 wins a U.S. Open. Like he was gone. Again, I keep saying, if they all can do it, then why can't Tiger? Tom Watson at the age of 59 almost won an Open championship. So if Tom Watson can do it at the age of 59, you don't think Tiger Woods can't? Of course he can. If he can hit it 330 and beat Tiger Woods and finish 4 rounds like he just did at a very hard walking golf course, then, I'm here to watch him go on and win another PGA Tour event and or majors or do whatever he wants to do in the game of golf. If I'm looking to Tiger Woods to be a role model for me as a man, or for my kids to role model him as like how he conducts himself off the course, or if he happens to get caught sliding a Tampax to Justin Thomas in a very private, sort of jovial, buddy to buddy little side joke that obviously he orchestrated well before, walking off that tee. He knew he was going to drive it by these guys. And he set that up in which he was going to, and it happened to get caught by a camera that zoomed in and realized, he was passing him a tampon. It's like, did it surprise anybody on this podcast that Tiger Woods' like sense of humor is always been like the least impressive thing about Tiger Woods? He has been laughed at by people his whole life, regardless of whether the jokes are funny or not. He's not, he can say something funny. We all can. He's just not a comedian. He's not who I'm looking to. Like, he is the most awkward guy one of the most awkward people I've ever been around. But I marvel at his competitive nature, his dogged approach to trying to be the greatest of all time. I marvel at his 82 wins and 15 majors. But when he does shit like that, it's like, yeah, that's Tiger.
Well, I mean, we don't have to debate the merits of whether or not it was a funny joke, but it is revealing, and certainly there's been a lot of discussion about it. And the comment that has amused me the most on Twitter is that it was just a private joke between two guys. It's like Tiger, more than anybody, knows that every single thing he does or says is always going to be looked at through a magnifying glass.
I can't believe he did it.
He's in the middle of a tournament, and no matter how smooth he is, people are going to see some handoff. The whole point is to get a reaction from Justin. Someone's going to catch it. They zoom in on everything. I mean, remember his chipped tooth years ago? Like he tried to hide that under the scarf. Like, he should know more than anyone that it's going to get found out. And as you say, Matt, it was clearly like, how long was he carrying that in his pocket for holes? Like, what if it had fallen out when he's going to mark a putt? Like, the whole thing is just like so ridiculous and sophomoric. And, but it is revealing of who Tiger really is. And
we've known it all along. Go back to GQ at the beginning, why he started hating the press in the beginning. He's got like this odd sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah. It basically, it's one of the things that happens when you become famous is I think your development basically stops when you become famous, whatever age that is. So for Tiger, it was definitely 20, but possibly 16 or 17. Like, he's never really matured beyond that. And there's little glimpses of it at inopportune times, like what just happened. And, we're not going to pretend it was a international crisis, but it was just kind of dumb. And it definitely besmirched what was otherwise an impressive performance. But I will say, I don't fully agree with what you said, Matt. Like, all those guys you cited who pulled off unlikely major championship victories, their bodies were sound. Now their golf games could come and go, and they had things going on in their lives, whether it was Jack facing a bankruptcy or Ben Crenshaw losing his instructor. But Tiger, can he wake up 4 days in a row after 3 or 4 or 7 or 8 days of preparation? Can he wake up 4 days in a row at a major championship where his body feels good and he's able to make the swings he wants and he's not exhausted by the last 5 holes? And like we know
Ben Hogan. Look at Ben Hogan. How many majors did you win after the car crash?
That is the precedent, but it's like, I mean, there's clearly still some magic in Tiger's hands. Some of those shots he hit. He remains a great tactician, and a lot of these majors become more like chess than anything else. So you can never count him out. But if you look at his results in all these events since he's come back, he just gets generally worse as the week goes on, and Sundays when he's really struggling. And so maybe that can change, but it doesn't feel like what's going on in his body can necessarily be rehabbed in a gym, right? It's not like, I don't think he can make his ankle stronger, or he would have by now. He's had a lot of time, right? Like, it feels like he's probably as good as he can be physically right now. I don't know how he gets 20 or 60 or 80% better, which is what he probably needs. So obviously I'm not a physical trainer. I just play one on the internet, but it's hard to imagine Tiger's going to get any better physically, and he could only get worse. So whether he's got 4 days in a row of really clean golf, which is what it's going to take to beat Jon Rahm right now. I mean,
also 8,000 yards, Alan, at Augusta National when you count it all in.
I mean, look at how optimized Rahm is, and Max Homa and Cam Smith. He'll be at the majors, and Rory McIlroy. Tiger has to beat all those guys. They're not all going to have a bad week at the same time. Like, he's just given up so much. So
I just want to clip this. I just want to clip this, Jake. Clip this, Jake. And
he's Tiger.
This is going to be the lead on the Sunday night Masters when Tiger's slipping on the green jacket.
I've been wrong before.
None of what you're going to say now is going to be part of the clip that we show. So it's too late. So like you've already said it. We're not going to add like but nothing. Like everyone's going to destroy you guys when we just take that minute and a half. Like impossible, no way, can't do it. And it's just like, oh, Tiger's winning another green jacket.
I didn't say it's impossible. I didn't say he can't do it.
Again, Alan, none of what you're about to say is going to help the clip.
This golf course has always been his nemesis. I think just if you look at his ability, his swing speed, his ability to move the golf ball, and given his competitive nature and his hands and his ability to get the ball in the hole and what he does, under pressure, I mean, 82-15. Add up all the guys you just talk about. List them. Go through all their. You can't add up their credentials to get to 82-15.
If Tiger could take a golf cart in the majors, I would say he's much more dangerous. He has to walk 30 miles in 4 days. He can't get from the parking lot to the first tee without a major pimp swag because he can't. He's got a huge limp. Like,
do you guys follow the Twitter account Old Takes Exposed?
Of course.
For moments just like this right here. That clip is going to go viral of like, if he took a card or he can't do it or he can't walk there. And then they're like, and it's just be like, oh, here's Alan and Matt talking about how Tiger can't win the Masters.
I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Matt, you've cited 82-15 a number of times. Those are iconic numbers. Can you imagine if he can get to 83-16? If he gets to 83-16, then of course he's got Snead. But then I think the math is going to change, and people are going to go back to the 86 math, which was, Jack Nicklaus just won his 20th major, and by that math, Tiger will be up to 19. Right, Alan? Help me out. Is that correct?
Yeah, he would. He's still behind Jack. But
one.
Okay.
Now the race is on.
Well, the race has been on for a quarter century. I mean, listen, it would be spectacular. I was on the grounds in 19 in Augusta, and it was epic. And I never thought that would happen. And I said that ahead of that for years. Like, I think I said at some point, after all the surgeries and the chip yips and shooting 85, the Memorial, and that humongous gouge he made on the first tee box at St. Andrews and all that. I mean, I say if Tiger Woods can come back and win any tournament, even the Bob Hope, it'll be one of the greatest accomplishments of his career. And not only he won the Tour Championship, he won the freaking Masters. Like, I've been wrong before, and that's why I'm never definitive like you're trying to make it out to be, Ryan. I always leave a little wiggle room
Again, the clip that we're going to clip.
Yeah, but they can edit out that wiggle room, Alan. You'll still get buried.
Like, we're not running any of this. The clip that we're going to take out is very definitive.
I would.
People being people today, they'll say things like, "Oh, does Alan Shipnuck know that's not called the Bob Hope anymore?" Yeah, I think he knows, but they'll still make you out to think like, "Oh, he thinks the Bob Hope still."
Michael, I'd be curious just to get your thoughts, given your place in the game and your perspective, but Tiger, the man and evolution, and the odd sense of humor and the incident with Justin Thomas, and what are your thoughts on all that?
The overall statement on Tiger will always be what it was from the beginning, from the most unlikely background, with a mother who's an immigrant, a father who faced so much racism as a kid, who grew up playing not country club golf, but military golf, who came at the game with a completely different perspective and dominated like nobody has ever dominated any sport ever, really. Secretary would probably be the only thing that comes to mind. So
Kelly Slater.
Okay, that's interesting. Not knowledgeable to know that, but I'll take your word for that. But I think he'll go down in history. That all that other stuff will just sort of fall by the wayside, and we'll think of him as we think of the great boxers of yesteryear, as just a completely dominant athlete for whom the mindset was everything. I mean, take all the talent in the world and then have the mindset of, I will not accept defeat. And we are definitely, including this week, seeing it still to this day. He nearly killed himself in that car crash. That car crash is completely inexplicable. And we don't need to get into it because we've done it before. And to come back and just to be able to play 4 rounds of golf and beat a lot of people, beat everybody who didn't make the cut, and then he beat 20 or so other players, I don't know the exact number, is a remarkable statement to the broad thing of what we're saying. There is no quit in this person's mentality, and he separated himself from the crowd forever on that basis alone.
Michael, you don't think that all the off the course stuff is going to be part of how Tiger's thought of? Because it's certainly it's elevated Jack Nicklaus in that he was such a classy champion and he was such a gracious loser, and Tiger's both of those things too. But when the totality of why Nicklaus has been so revered for so long was just the way he lived his life with Barbara and the kids and all this and that, and for better and for worse, it becomes part of how athletes are remembered. And you don't think that's going to be, I mean, because when I watch Tiger now, I feel a deep pang of melancholy because he's just destroyed his body in so many different ways. And it's been mostly willful and like it's the ultimate what if in golf is would take away the sex scandal. How many majors does Tiger have? I mean, that derailed his career in a profound way. And whatever he was searching for in the kill house with the Green Berets when he hurt his knee and, possibly busted his Achilles and all these things, like this all has got him to where he is now. And, the car accident, as he always said, it's in the police report. It is in the police report. I mean, that pedal was held down at 99% force throughout the whole thing. You can't say he fell asleep or he was just texting. Like something really dark happened there. And, he's just it's a monumental career, even without all that others. But to me, it's the ultimate what if. And so, he's a year older than Jack was when he won the Masters. But like Jack and Arnie, they were hale and hearty into their 60s and 70s. I mean, they could still swing the club and they could still walk golf courses, and competitive golf was part of their life still. And that Tiger's taken that away from himself in a large part. I mean, so I don't know. I agree that Tiger's the most dominant golfer who's ever lived, despite everything. but I do think that everything is part of his legacy.
Alan, it's fascinating to hear you all say all that. You remind me of somebody I know very well, me, because that's exactly how I feel about everything. But I've got a big except, and the big except is this: it's the power of the Nike argument. Winning takes care of everything. I think all those things that are so important to the four of us, all those subtle things, how Big Jack handled all those 19 runner-up finishes in the majors. We saw the arm go around Watson at Turnberry, and literally hundreds of other things, how he handled the President's Cup in South Africa and the thing with Jacqueline and giving him the putt at the Ryder Cup, literally 100 plus things over the years. And Tiger doesn't have that. But we live in a culture now where it's all about how'd you make the money? How'd you win not how'd you win the tournaments, did you win the tournaments? He's got the 83 and the 16 or whatever it turns out to be in the end. And no, if we're really talking about legacy, if that's what this conversation is now about, no, I don't think all those other things that are so meaningful to the four of us, I don't think broadly speaking, I don't think they'll matter. And just one quick additional thought to that. I was stunned, not stunned, that really wouldn't be the right word, but I was interested to hear Tigers refer to Arnold as, quote, my hero. And I knew that he admired Arnold greatly, and there's a lot to admire about Arnold. But these two guys couldn't be more different. But when he said that, I think it tells me that he wishes he had what Arnold had, which is natural warmth, natural desire to be around people, and just really, at the end of the day, an immense comfort with himself and joy from being the person that he is, where I don't think Tiger, sadly, has that.
I'll take it from one different angle. Is that
Please.
One of the people in this conversation that we're talking about outside of Tiger was a famous womanizer too. It's a different time, right? Like the car wreck and the social media and TMZ and all of those things changed golf. Like, I mean, or Jake, you can cut it out or whatever. I mean, Arnold was a famous womanizer. We all know that. Like he had people, but like it's a different time, right? Like no one ever took pictures of anyone else where it is. So I think I'm not the article. I mean, my deeper thoughts are in an article that'll be out today, but like his transgressions are indefensible. But it's a different time. Like we didn't live in a world where every movement of every famous person was put on social media.
I totally agree. Part of me thinks that that's, why Tiger wishes he could be Arnold, could be Arnold Palmer, could do whatever he was the womanizing and the drug addictions and the, getting pulled over and not even knowing what state he's in. I mean, the car accidents, again, he's a flawed individual. And so is Phil. And, in many ways, so was Arnold Palmer and, Jack Nicklaus. I mean, everybody has their stuff. But, Ray Lewis is on ESPN being lauded as like one of the great, like, what, George Foreman was a flawed individual and reinvented himself. Tom Weiskopf, we talked about him last week, he dealt with alcohol addiction and had a horrible reputation as a pro and reinvented himself, became an incredible analyst, incredible architect, and shared openly about like all the evolution he's got. Like at the end of the day, they're people. These guys are actually human beings. They're going through their stuff. They were the products of their environment. Tiger as a teen was predicted to like have more of an impact or just as much of an impact as Gandhi. Like, what is that? Like, where does that, like, what is all of that? So yeah, he's flawed. He's got issues. I'm just compartmentalize him and look to him and marvel at him as strictly like this competitor. And when the gun goes off, the guy is one of the toughest guys to beat, regardless of the situation. I marvel at his abilities under pressure, his accomplishments inside the ropes. Outside the ropes, I don't, it is what he is. It's just, he's an athlete. He's not God's gift to like mankind beyond if you really love and appreciate the game of golf. I don't try to make him something he's not.
I mean, that's all well said, Matt, but part of why we care about athletes is because they are humans and we get invested in their lives. I mean, why was, to use your example, like why was the Crenshaw victory so emotional? It's because of what was happening away from the golf course. You know, the hug between Phil and Amy in 2010 because she had cancer, you know, and he wins the Masters for her. Like it's the humanity that draws us to them. Otherwise, they're just, you know, everyone's hitting the same 7-iron. Who cares?
Okay, I'm gonna pump my article again, but like that is why I love Tiger. Is he's flawed. I'm not defending any of those things. None of them. Like they're indefensible.
John Daly.
Like none of them. But we're all like, I mean, the opening article is sit and think about the worst mistake you've ever made in your life and have it played out in public persona and be lauded from the age of 2, literally, as the greatest thing to mankind, and not grow up with some sort of ego where you think that you can get away with the things that Tiger thinks he can get away with. Still, only 3 years ago, he was busted for DUI or under the influence. He's a flawed human. That's all. We're all flawed, and he's among it. And maybe he's more flawed than all of us. But he has seemed to mature a little bit. Seems to be a good father. He gets along with Elin, or it seems to. They obviously we're not privy to private conversations, but the fact that they share custody and not have a public fight in court all the time speaks to at least a little bit of maturing on his part. So I see where you guys are coming from. I take it from a different angle.
Well, and that's great. I love that. And, you know, I have a lot of empathy for Tiger. Like he's been through a lot, and if I sound like I'm judging him, that's not it at all. I'm just looking at in the context of, to me, when I see his career and what could be, it's hard not to feel a pang because it's, you know.
Totally agree with that. 100%.
I do too. But I mean, the only word that maybe would be better than career for me in that sense, Alan, would be his life. I mean, how can you look at Tiger Woods' life and not be in pain for him? And, you know, millions and millions of people would have traded places with Arnold Palmer in a New York minute. But I don't know that millions of people would trade places with Tiger Woods. I don't think Rory McIlroy would trade places with Tiger Woods.
No, definitely not. Or I'm not sure even a guy like Max Homa who's never won a major would trade places with him. But
Alan, I'd be curious to know you've done a lot of reporting in this area. One of the things that separates live golf from the PGA Tour is, of course, the size of the field. Tiger has such a big voice in the tour and what will happen to these elevated events. A year from now, when there's a reconfiguration of what these elevated events are, what do you think the size? If Tiger could have his stamp on it, what do you think the size of the field would be for the LA tournament?
I want to say 70. It may get bumped up.
You think that's what Tiger would want? Only 70?
Yeah, Rory came out and said that's what he wants.
Yeah.
Rory said that's what Tiger wants?
No, that's what he wants.
That's what Rory wants. I mean, honestly, Rory has more juice than Tiger now because he's the guy who's talking to players every week, and he's on the board of directors. And you know, Tiger he's Tiger, but he's not really playing a lot of PGA Tour events anymore. So, and also, I mean, Tiger more than anybody else believes in a meritocracy, and so I think he would say, "Listen, if you want to be in the field, play better." I think he'd be the ultimate play better guy. And you can always play your way into the field, but you got to make more birdies. So it could, but there's a vicious debate going on among the players, and that could get bumped up to 80 or 90. I mean, but even 100's a stretch. So I think 70,
80 or 90, no cut or with a cut.
Well, when you get to that many people, you'd have to have a cut. You know, 70, there's probably just enough, you know,
what you can make it work. 20 players from 70?
What's that?
Cut 20 players from 70?
No, 70 would be no cut.
70 would be no cut.
No cut. If you get to 100, you're going to have a cut. But So
I think now Keith Mitchell didn't play well. He swings beautifully. I like to watch him swing, but to me, with having Keith Mitchell in the mix makes the tournament more interesting.
yeah, Kashmir Keith, he's fun to watch. I mean, but he's a guy who's upwardly mobile in his career, and if you're in the top 70, you're stoked because then you're going to show up these tournaments a dozen times a year or whatever, and you're gonna make a check. You're gonna make a fat check. You don't have to worry about making the cut, and that's what these guys want. They want to get paid. I mean, they're pretty open about it. So, but anyway, that'll get announced. I believe there's a big player meeting at Bay Hill, and I think that's when it's going to get unveiled and it's going to go public. So we're not going to have to wait too much longer to get the resolution to this. But before we go, I think we should just tip our caps to Bernhard Langer, who won again today on the senior tour, tied the all-time record for wins with a guy named Hale Irwin. And Michael, you're probably the world's foremost expert on Bernhard Langer. You've written a ton about him, and I was like at the gym. I mean, I don't really follow the senior tour. I don't know who follows it super closely, and all of a sudden it's like Bernhard Langer's like 17 under. He's going to win this tournament. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, is the guy 80 yet? It's just unbelievable.
Okay, I have a question. Before Michael answers. Better odds to win the Masters, Bernhard Langer or Tiger Woods?
Bernhard Langer has absolutely zero chance. Tiger has north of zero, so that's not a question. It's a question, but it's not.
If they played the Masters for the members tees, I would say Bernie Langer all the way. But at 7,700 yards, I mean, Tiger can still move it. Now, power is a big thing there. So the answer to the question has to be Tiger, but
it's not a question. I mean, Bernie can't hit it 330 yards. It's just not. You got it.
Wouldn't that be great if they said, you know what, we're gonna do something a little different this year. We're gonna play it from the members tees, and we're gonna bake the greens out. We're gonna put the pins in crazy places, and like I would be all in on that.
That's Freddie. Freddie wins it by a mile.
Freddie wins that one. I think you're absolutely right about that.
And one of the great moments from 2019, Alan, you and I have talked about this, when after Tiger won and bro hug, and there, with Zach Johnson and Bubba and various others who were hanging around, and there's Bernhard at the end of the receiving line, and just a manful, regular, conventional handshake from Tiger Woods to Bernhard Langer that really spoke of Tiger's respect for Langer and Langer's respect for Tiger. I've spoken to both about the other.
That was cool.
But again, I mean, and I've talked to Bernhard a lot, and I've bumped into him from time to time, crossing paths. Here's what Langer does. He outworks his competition. He is on the range. He is a machine. He is honing his game. Jon Rahm, same thing. Max Homa, a couple years ago said, I'm done with podcast. I'm going to focus. I'm going to try to be the best I can possibly be. There is something to be said for people who work really hard, who also have talent and experience. I mean, that is how Hale Irwin got to where he got. That's why Langer has gotten to where he's got. That's why Jack got to where he's got. Tiger is back to where he is today, being able to walk, make a cut, play 4 rounds, shoot 4 or 5 under, because he's working at it. He's physically dedicating himself to getting to a place where he can hit it 330 yards off the tee and compete against the guys he wants to compete with. I mean, by the way, work matters. Look at Langer. Langer doesn't just rock up and try to beat his competition. He outworks them. And that's why he's had the career he's had.
His physique actually looks almost identical to what it did in 1985.
Yeah. But what's amazing is he still has the need and the desire to keep working like that into his late 60s. That's what's incredible.
It's incredible, but it's there. It lives in him. That's what he is. It defines him. He's a golfer. He's dedicated to his craft. He wants it, that's what's in him. He's a golfer.
Yeah. Oh, Carlos Franco's a golfer too. I mean, but he didn't try very hard, but he probably had more talent than Bernhard Langer, but it's just like, it's incredible. You know, I hope that when I'm Bernie's age, like I'm grinding like that.
I have a Twitter follower who is so hung up on Bernhard anchoring and sends me pictures weekly of Bernhard. And finally, I just replied to him today. I usually ignore him, and I just replied. I was like, "It's the Champions Tour, man. No one is this mad about Bernhard anchoring." But his career,
Ryan, I have heard other players who are plenty mad. But when you look at it really closely, it's like, oh, it's the blousy sweater that's making contact. It's such a bad rule. They should never have allowed it in the first place. They should have kept putters to 36 inches or something. But as the great man says, it is what it is. I do have a fantasy. Matt, I'd like to hear your opinion on this and everybody else's, because everyone else has heard me on this. I have this fantasy that Tiger will turn the 3 senior majors into a thing. Nobody's ever won. I don't think Gary Player ever did. The British Senior Open, British U.S. Senior Open, and the Senior PGA Championship in the same year. It would be neat if a healthy-ish Tiger at 50 would say, I'm going after it. Do you think, if that happened, Matt, do you think it could turn into a thing that people would care about if this one particular golfer, Tiger Woods, did it?
Of course, anything. He made the PNC father and son a thing. It's like he can turn anything into a thing. He's about to turn simulator golf into a thing. He's doing it right under the nose of everybody who's balking at LIV doing a breakaway tour. He and Rory have their own breakaway tour. It's happening right as we speak, signing players, making a team concept, creating, a more livelier venture of the game of golf. Whatever Tiger does that involves a golf club and a golf ball and some sense of scoring is a thing. It's official.
Well said. I mean, that's true.
Well,
look at Match. What's that Match?
Whatever. Rinse and repeat.
Well, it was, not to get too in the weeds on the future of the senior majors, but theoretically, Phil could play those too, even if he's banned from the senior tour, right? It's like, because they're in the same little gray area as everything else. So how about Phil and Tiger going at it head to head for the U.S. Senior Open? Like, that would be epic. So
you're saying he is or he's not banned from the senior tour?
He's not. They're not. Those tournaments are not under the hammer of the PGA Tour.
Same reason, same reason you can play the majors.
I mean, that could be, that's delicious to think about. And it goes to what I said 40 minutes ago. I mean, Tiger in a golf cart is dangerous. And of course, they don't really use him in the majors, do they? I don't even watch the senior tour enough to know. I know they don't do it for the U.S. senior.
No. They're 4 rounds walking.
Yeah.
If the Champions Tour had gone back to 44 years old a long time ago, would we be it? Would LIV exist? Like if these guys had the option of being able to extend their careers, the Paul Caseys and the Graham McDowells and the Ian Poulters and all these guys that are going to march towards their that mid-level zone in which they are struggling to compete against the 20-somethings, but they're not old enough to compete against the 50-somethings. Like, why isn't the Champions Tour young? Why doesn't the Champions Tour get down and start competing in all of this by creating a scenario in which people have the choice of playing both tours or playing one or not the other? That's why not let these names that are in these tweener phases of their career have an outlet for competitive golf?
Right. But now I would say, Matt, I think 20 years ago, 44, 45 might have looked like a better number. Now, with guys staying as fit as they are, I think 50 probably is a good number.
But okay, then what happened with all the guys that are now have gone to LIV that couldn't compete against the PGA Tour? You say that it's sort of true, yes, from a technology, but the younger guys benefit from that same technology that the 40-somethings are benefiting from as well, and it's all relative. So is it? Can they still compete with a bad back or a bad hit? Lee Westwood, the names go on and on and on. This was their LIV was an outlet in which they can keep making money playing, quote, competitive golf.
You guys want to hear a shocker? And I think Alan knows this. The first LIV event is in Tucson.
No, it's in Mexico. The second one is in
the first live
Tucson.
event in the United States is in Tucson on a giftless course that nobody wants to play. Nobody will care about that trip.
If people were more invested in the actual competition on Live, someone would do a deep dive on the tournament venues, because they're not A+. And but there's certainly going to be more articles about the 10th hole at Riviera than about the Live schedule. But yeah, that course is no bueno. The one they're going to in Tulsa, when you're like the fourth best course in Tulsa, that's a problem. The one in Orlando, you would know that one, Matt.
Alan, can you just summarize for us the San Francisco federal ruling and if it's meaningful and what it means?
Oh God, yeah, man, we're touching them all on this podcast. So it is meaningful. The in this big antitrust suit between the Liv has sued the PGA Tour. They're now in the deposition phase, and the guy who runs a public investment fund, His Excellency Yasser Al Rumayyan, who's very involved in all the negotiations, and I've heard when he's a big part of Live Golf. There's no question he's been involved in the contracts and a lot of the decision making. No one disputes that. So the PGA Tour lawyers want to depose him. And the Rumayyan, His Excellency, he's known as HE among the Live players, or they call him the investor, which I like. He's the investor. He's claimed diplomatic immunity because he's the holder of many state secrets. I mean, he's probably the number 2 guy in all of Saudi Arabia. He's always been close to MBS, and this guy runs, the PIF, and he's also the chairman of Aramco, which is the most profitable company in the world. Like he's the man. But he claimed diplomatic immunity, and the judge basically said, no, sorry, if you're this involved in the day-to-day dealings of Live Golf, you can be deposed. So now that puts, you can imagine this is like alarm bells are going off in the palaces around Saudi Arabia, because the last thing they want is for him to be deposed under oath. And it introduces the possibility that Liv could just withdraw the suit and be like, never mind, it's not worth it, or they could refile it in a much more limited way. But this is kind of the worst case scenario for Liv. They're now going to have to make a hard choice.
Alan, how do you compel a non-U.S. citizen to stand under questioning of an American lawyer in an American court system? How does that work?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on the internet. But the court. The case is been Live Golf filed the case in California, in the United States. They chose the venue. They didn't do this in London or anywhere else. Like, they set the rules of engagement. Therefore, the court has jurisdiction. And if Rumayyan doesn't give in, I don't know what happens if he just flat out refuses to do it. Does the whole thing just fold? But it's not a great scenario for Live Golf. And so how they handle this will be interesting to see. Doesn't mean that, maybe he will ultimately be deposed, and there'll be some limits placed on what can and can't be asked. But of course, the tour lawyers are going to try to make it as uncomfortable and controversial as possible. And that's why this is all so much fun. All right, this has been another Fire Drill podcast for Matt Ginella and Michael Bamberger and Ryan French. I'm Alan Shipnuck. Thank you as always for listening. We'll do this again next week. I will actually be calling in from Mexico. I'm going to be at the Live event in Mayakoba, Greg Norman Design. First event of the year. Should be juicy, should be fun. There'll be lots to talk about. But until then, we appreciate your fidelity, and that's the end.